Before you can write strong argumentative essays, you must understand the foundational elements of academic writing. Every successful essay, regardless of topic, relies on structure, clarity, and logical development. An essay is not simply a collection of ideas. It is a carefully organized argument designed to persuade a specific audience. In academic writing, you are expected to move beyond personal opinion and demonstrate critical thinking through credible research, thoughtful analysis, and formal academic language. Understanding the core elements of an essay provides the framework necessary for writing effective argumentative essays. Mastering these elements allows you to communicate ideas clearly, professionally, and persuasively. An academic essay is formal, structured writing that presents a central claim or analytical position on one specific topic. It is not a personal reflection or informal opinion piece. Academic essays rely on structured reasoning and credible support through research. In college, strong writing is measured not only by ideas, but by how clearly and logically those ideas are presented. Although all academic writing requires the use of specific elements, today we are focusing on the core elements of an argumentative essay. While many of these components apply to all academic writing, we will emphasize how argument essays require credible sources, academic tone, and synthesis of multiple viewpoints, which other styles do not always require. Argumentative essays are built on persuasion through evidence, not emotion. You must demonstrate critical thinking by engaging with multiple perspectives and defending your claim using research. The goal is not just to state your opinion, but to prove it. This is accomplished by making a claim on a debatable issue or a topic that has at least two different viewpoints. Then, you collect and analyze credible sources that support both your viewpoint and that of the opposing side. You then use the evidence to persuade your readers of your viewpoint through logic and reasoning. Every academic essay follows this basic structure. Even though argumentative essays are more complex, they still follow this core format of introduction, body paragraphs, conclusion, and works cited or reference page. Structure creates clarity for the reader and ensures your ideas build logically, so it is important that you follow this basic structure. The first part of any academic essay is the introduction. The introduction moves from general to specific information related to the chosen topic. Always begin with context to situate the topic, then provide necessary background information, and end with a clear thesis statement. Avoid vague openings or questions as they are weak and can lead to confusion. The thesis should be specific and argumentative, not simply descriptive, and should come at the end of the introduction paragraph. This sample introduction works well because the paragraph opens with a broad, relevant issue, student stress in higher education. Then it narrows to become more specific and moves towards institutional responsibility and policy. Next, it takes a clear position on flexible deadlines, and ends with a clear thesis that identifies three clear supporting points: mental health, performance, and equity. A thesis is not a topic. It is a claim that comes at the end of the introduction paragraph. For example, social media affects students is not argumentative, but social media negatively affects students' writing due to its ineffective use of language, writing structure, and viewpoint is. A strong thesis specifies how and takes a stance. The thesis controls the direction of the essay and determines what evidence is necessary. This sample thesis is strong because it takes a clear position. The claim is not neutral. It argues that colleges should implement flexible deadline policy. This makes it argumentative rather than descriptive. It is also debatable, which means that reasonable people could disagree. Some may argue flexible deadlines reduce rigor or accountability. Because it can be challenged, it works well for an argumentative essay. It is also specific. It does not just say flexible deadlines are good. It specifies the setting, undergraduate courses; the policy, flexible deadlines; the reasons, mental health, performance, equity, and maintaining standards. It also provides a roadmap. The three main reasons, mental health, academic performance, and equity, signal the likely structure of the body paragraphs. This helps guide both the writer and the reader. Finally, it focuses on analysis and not emotion. The wording is measured and academic. It avoids exaggerated or overly emotional language. Each body paragraph, or any paragraph that follows the introduction other than the conclusion, should follow a clear structure. The topic sentence introduces the paragraph's claim. Evidence supports that claim, and analysis explains how that evidence proves the thesis. This order is important as it starts broad, then narrows, and finally explains. Many students include evidence, but forget analysis, so ensuring that you follow this order guarantees that your analysis is where your thinking appears. One way to remember this is the acronym PI. Each body paragraph should start with a topic sentence. Topic sentences act as mini thesis statements for each paragraph. They should clearly connect back to the main argument, but stay focused on just one subtopic. If a paragraph's topic sentence does not appear to support the thesis, it likely does not belong in the essay and should be removed. This sample topic sentence is strong because it directly connects to the thesis, mental health benefit, makes a clear claim, improves mental health, is arguable, some may disagree, and set up the paragraph focus, stress reduction, and maintaining standards. This sentence clearly tells the reader what the paragraph will prove through evidence and synthesis. After your topic sentence, you must use credible sources that support your argument. Credibility matters in academic writing, so you should rely primarily on scholarly and peer-reviewed sources. Popular blogs, Wikipedia, or opinion-based websites are not appropriate for academic arguments. Strong research strengthens credibility and allows the writer to have a strong discussion about the topic. Keep in mind, however, that not all sources are equal. You should evaluate who wrote the source, where it was published, whether it is current, and whether it includes its own research support through citations, works cited, or reference pages. If any of this information is missing, it is not a credible source regardless of what type of academic source it is. Academic research builds on existing scholarship, so it is important that you find credible sources and use your own credible sources in any type of academic writing. Source 1, by Smith and Lee, is a longitudinal study which suggests peer-reviewed research. It also provides empirical data by measuring anxiety levels and satisfaction. This is a credible source. Source 2, by Johnson, is a scholarly argument about structural inequities. It focuses on policy impact on specific student populations and provides a list of sources in its own paper. This too is credible. These sources are credible and helpful to the body paragraph, as one source provides quantitative research, the other provides analytical and social context, and both use multiple scholarly voices to strengthen their own credibility. Evidence, whether it is a direct quote or paraphrase, must be integrated smoothly. Avoid quote dumping, where a quotation stands alone without explanation or introduction. Always introduce the source by stating who the author is or the source the evidence came from. Provide the evidence, and then explain its significance to your argument, especially in relation to other sources and evidence. Citation style, whether it be MLA or APA, often depends on the instructor requirements, but consistency is key. For our class, we are using MLA citations, which we will cover in another video. The integration of the first piece of paraphrased evidence in the sample above is done correctly as the source is introduced. The key findings are summarized in the writer's own words, a parenthetical citation is included, and the evidence is clearly connected to the claim about mental health. This avoids quote dumping and keeps the focus on the writer's argument. The use of the second piece of quoted evidence is also correct, as the quote is introduced with context, the quotation is selective and purposeful, the signal phrase, or how the quote is introduced, integrates the author naturally, and the citation is formatted in MLA style. The quote adds authority and persuasion to the claim. Once you have your evidence, you've read it and reread it, and you've determined what each quote or paraphrase means in relation to your argument, you need to synthesize the information. Synthesis is a higher level skill, but one that you're expected to do at the college level. Instead of discussing just one source per paragraph, you have to connect sources together and express to your reader the relationship between the information from each of those sources. For example, one scholar may agree with another, or they may disagree. Strong academic writing shows how sources interact. Synthesis occurs when you, as the writer, help the sources talk to one another. Imagine it like sitting at the dinner table with the authors of each source. What might they agree on, disagree on? How might their conversation about the topic go? This is synthesis. The example here demonstrates synthesis because the writer does not discuss the sources separately and then stop. Instead, the writer connects them, saying, "Together these findings." The sentence explains how both sources contribute to a broader conclusion. The paragraph moves beyond summary and analysis of one source for multiple at one time. Synthesis shows that the writer understands how sources relate to one another and the overall argument, which builds the writer's credibility. Once you have your body paragraphs filled with synthesized, credible evidence that supports your argument, you have to include a counterargument. Addressing counterarguments demonstrates maturity and critical thinking. Ignoring opposing views weakens your credibility and can make it seem like you are hiding information from the academic community. You should acknowledge validated concerns from the opposing viewpoint. Then, you have to provide a rebuttal, which allows you to respond to the counterargument using evidence and reasoning that ultimately supports your view. This rebuttal is your way of having a conversation with the opposing viewpoint by stating your facts that go against it, or refuting the claim of the counterargument. The counterargument portion is highlighted yellow and provides an unbiased counterargument to deadlines. It is an effective counterargument because it clearly signals that the evidence is the opposition's. Critics argue. It represents the opposing viewpoint fairly rather than dismissively, and it uses a credible-sounding source. It includes a direct quote to show the opposition's reasoning and explains the logic behind the concern, real-world preparation and responsibility. It is very important that you demonstrate that you understand the opposing viewpoints before refuting them. This builds credibility and shows critical thinking. The rebuttal portion is highlighted green and provides an unbiased response to the counterargument. This example is strong because it contains a clear transitional signal. The word, however, clearly marks the shift from opposition to response. It also uses evidence, not opinion, to refute the claim of the counterargument. The rebuttal relies on research and not emotion, so there is unbiased language and clear organization. It also addresses the core concern of the counterargument, which was that flexibility lowers rigor. It only provides evidence that relates to the single counterargument, which is what made it an effective rebuttal. It directly responds by stating that the performance did not decline. It maintains academic tone by acknowledging that the concerns are understandable, which avoids sounding defensive or dismissive. Finally, it ends by reconnecting to the thesis when the final sentence reinforces that flexible policies maintain standards while supporting students. Throughout your entire essay, but especially within your body paragraphs, academic tone is important. You should use professional and clear language that most academic community members can understand while also sounding unbiased. You should avoid overly emotional language, exaggerations, or casual phrasing, and use precise vocabulary related to your topic. For example, if you are discussing education, you should use educational terminology. This provides clout and ultimately strengthens your argument. While first person and sometimes second person can be used in narrative or process writing, argumentative essays often emphasize analysis over personal narrative, and so you should be avoiding both. Instead, use terminology such as researcher, writer, or more if needed. Let's look at an example. When pre-writing or even speaking to a friend about your essay, you might say, letting students turn things in late helps them do better because they're not as stressed out. This uses casual phrasing, turn things in late, conversational wording, do better, contractions, there, vague wording, things, and less precise reasoning. This would not be an acceptable phrase in a formal essay. Instead, consider this sentence. Flexible deadline policies contribute to improved student performance by reducing stress-related barriers to academic engagement. This uses formal vocabulary like contribute, reducing, barriers, academic engagement. Precise language, with a specific focus on performance and stress-related barriers, is also included. And an objective tone is present, since there are not examples of slang or conversational phrasing. Finally, it uses third-person perspective. No I, you, or casual phrasing are seen in this version at all. Within each of your body paragraphs, including the counter-argument and rebuttal, it is essential that you demonstrate unity and coherence. This means that each paragraph should focus on one main claim that you identified in your pre-writing. It is also important that you do not use the same quote multiple times throughout your paper, and so you must determine what claim is best supported by each quote before you begin writing. You should also use transitions to help readers follow the argument. That does not mean that each paragraph should start with a transition word, but that each paragraph should have a clear transition into or out of the argument you are presenting. Your paragraphs should also follow a logical progression both within each paragraph and between each paragraph. This often means that your paragraphs use the PI method addressed earlier in the presentation, as well as following the roadmap of your thesis statement. This logical sequence, in addition to the use of key terms, strengthens your cohesion. The final paragraph of your essay should be the conclusion. This paragraph should not introduce new evidence, and so most of the time should also not include quotes, paraphrased information, or citations. Instead, it reinforces the main argument and explains why the issue matters to the academic community. Strong conclusions broaden the discussion, cause others to consider your viewpoint, and reminds readers of the argument's importance. Most conclusions restate the original thesis in new words. This is shown in the yellow. This sentence should revisit the main argument, rephrase the thesis rather than copy it. It also reminds the reader of the central claim and briefly references the counter-argument to reinforce complexity. Next, the conclusion includes a summary of main points in the green. This section summarizes the three major body paragraph points: mental health, academic performance, and equity. It also reinforces the claim, and most importantly, it synthesizes the essay's supporting arguments into one cohesive statement. This is the most important synthesis of the entire paper. It then provides the broader implication and significance in blue. This section expands upon the basic summary and explains why the argument matters at an institutional level. It also connects the essay to larger academic values. It ends with a strong closing insight in the orange. This insight leaves the reader with a forward-looking statement that can lead to further research or a solution. It also provides a sense of closure and purpose and reinforces the importance of the issue. The final part of every academic paper is the works cited or reference page. If you are using APA, it is called a reference page. However, for this class, you will be using MLA, which makes this final page the works cited page. Including this page with proper citations avoids plagiarism and demonstrates academic integrity by giving credit to the sources that you use to guide your writing. You should double-check formatting guides carefully before, during, and after writing your works cited page. Even strong essays lose credibility with incorrect citations, so check, check, check. In all MLA works cited pages, your entries are arranged alphabetically by the author's last name. There is also a proper MLA formatting structure for each entry. It should always start with the authors, then title of article in quotation marks, title of book or journal in italics, publisher, volume and issue numbers, year of publication, and page range. This reflects MLA 9 formatting conventions and is something we will discuss in another video. Keep in mind that there are correct formatting options for different types of media. Book titles and journal titles are italicized, while article titles are placed in quotation marks. This distinction is essential in MLA formatting. Hanging indentations must also be applied in a properly formatted document. This means that the second line of every entry should be indented. Punctuation must also follow MLA guidelines, so double-check where you use commas versus periods. Always double-check to ensure that you are consistent, because consistency increases professionalism and readability. Finally, all sources cited in the essay must appear here. Every source mentioned in in-text citations must appear on the works cited page, and every source on the works cited page must appear in the essay. This alignment is critical in academic writing and ensures that you are not plagiarizing. Many student essays struggle, not because of ideas, but because of execution. So make sure that you review your thesis statement to ensure it is not weak and is arguable. Include clear and strong analysis and synthesis. Do not use the same quotes over and over again, or quotes that are overused in other sources. And use a formal academic tone with academic language. Finally, make sure your citations are accurate and always included. Strong academic writing is not about length or complicated vocabulary. It is about clarity, structure, and evidence. A successful argumentative essay begins with a focused, debatable thesis that guides the entire paper. Each body paragraph must clearly connect back to that thesis and follow a logical structure. Credible sources strengthen your argument, but simply including research is not enough. You must integrate evidence smoothly, analyze it thoroughly, and synthesize multiple sources to demonstrate critical thinking. Addressing counter-arguments further strengthens your credibility. Finally, academic tone and correct citation practices reflect professionalism and integrity. When students combine clear structure, thoughtful analysis, credible research, and formal language, they produce writing that meets college-level expectations. In short, strong arguments are built, not stated. Credit for this presentation template goes to SlidesGo and includes icons by Flaticon and infographics and images by FreePeak.